There is a county record in Licking County, Ohio, filed in the autumn of 1864 that most archivists will tell you contains nothing of interest, a routine deposition, a civic formality. But if you read far enough into the document, past the livestock assessments and the property disputes, you find the sworn testimony of a gravedigger named Amos Curtiss, a man of modest education and, by all accounts, meticulous precision, who stated under oath that the skull he had uncovered was not shaped like any skull he had encountered in 30 years of burying the dead. It was larger, it was elongated toward the rear, and it possessed, along the upper jaw, what Curtiss described in his own handwriting as a second complete row of grinders, set behind the first as orderly and deliberate as a cabinet of keys. The local magistrate ordered the remains sealed and reinterred within 48 hours. The record was filed. Amos Curtiss was never publicly questioned again. What makes the Curtiss case uncomfortable is not its singularity, it is its repetition. Between 1838 and 1890, the Bureau of American Ethnology, a division operating under direct federal sanction, catalogued thousands of skeletal remains excavated from the great earthwork complexes of the Ohio and Mississippi valleys. The mounds at Chillicothe alone yielded human material across decades of controlled excavation. Among the surveyors producing field reports for these digs was Ephraim George Squier, one of the Bureau's most methodical archaeologists, whose published survey of 1848, Ancient Monuments of the Mississippi Valley, documented crania of unusual proportion recovered from Adena and Hopewell burial contexts. Squier did not frame these findings as aberrations. He framed them as a pattern, a biological signature of a population whose physical architecture did not conform neatly to the taxonomic categories being hardened into permanence by academic consensus in those same decades. The hypothesis examined in speculative anthropology today is not simply that unusual individuals occasionally existed, it is that an entire biological lineage, one with distinct cranial morphology, anomalous dental formation, and skeletal proportions exceeding established human ranges, was present in North America long before the framework we use to describe pre-Columbian civilization was ever fixed in place. The medical terminology for a second row of teeth is hyperdontia, a documented, verifiable phenomenon in which supernumerary teeth develop from residual dental lamina, the embryonic tissue responsible for tooth formation during gestation. In modern populations, isolated supernumerary teeth appear in roughly 1 to 4% of individuals. A fully articulated, complete second row is so rare that its occurrence in a living patient constitutes a published medical case study in its own right. Its presence in a burial skull, intact, bilateral, and anatomically symmetrical, is not a casual finding. It is an anomaly that demands explanation, not reclassification. The textbook response is always predictable: pathology, an isolated developmental error. And it may well be exactly that. But the Curtiss deposition does not stand alone. The Bureau's own field notes, now digitized and publicly archived, contain repeated references to skulls with unusual dentition, anomalous cranial sutures, and aberrant parietal structure recovered specifically from mound contexts, not from ordinary interments, but from the deliberate, architecturally sophisticated burial chambers of a culture we still do not fully understand. When forensic scientists apply isotopic collagen analysis to skeletal remains, specifically measuring the ratio of carbon-13 to carbon-12 preserved in bone mineral, they can establish not only the age of the individual at death, but their dietary profile and geographic origin across their lifetime. When such methods were applied in the early 20th century to anomalous skeletal material recovered from Lovelock Cave in Nevada, a site formerly documented by archaeologist Llewellyn Loud for the University of California in 1912. The dietary signatures and chronological readings produced results that researchers found genuinely difficult to reconcile with established migration timelines. The official response was not revision, it was reclassification. The standard model of Paleo-American migration places the first anatomically modern humans in the Americas between 15 and 20,000 years ago, arriving through a land corridor from the northwest. What it does not openly address is that isotopic anomalies from multiple mound contexts produce dates and biological profiles that sit persistently outside that corridor. Not dramatically, not impossibly. Just enough to be persistent. Just enough to be uncomfortable. Move to the opposite side of the world. The Paracas skulls of coastal Peru, physically documented for over a century, currently housed in the Regional Museum of Ica, exhibit cranial volumes up to 25% larger than the established maximum range of modern human skull capacity. The conventional explanation is intentional cranial deformation through board binding, a practice genuinely and widely documented across many ancient cultures. Binding, however, compresses and redistributes existing bone. It does not alter the fundamental count of cranial plates. Several Paracas specimens possess a single parietal plate where standard human anatomy consistently produces two, a structural anomaly, not a cosmetic one, and one that binding alone cannot produce. Move further. To the megalithic burial chambers of the Argar culture in southeastern Spain, where skeletal material reanalyzed by Spanish physical anthropologists in the late 1990s produced morphological measurements statistically divergent from all known Bronze Age European populations of the same period. And then to Melanesia, to the elongated skulls documented from burial sites across Vanuatu, populations separated from coastal Peru and from the Ohio River Valley by entire oceans and entire millennia. The same structural signature, the same anomalous proportion, the same institutional response, continent after continent, documentation, reclassification, and a silence that accumulates with the weight of unexamined habit. What Amos Curtiss held in his hands on that autumn morning in 1864 was not in all probability a monster. It was a question. A physical object that demanded a revision of the map. The conceptual map that institutions spend generations constructing, and that no institution dismantles easily, because to dismantle a map is to confess, in public and in permanence, that the territory was never fully understood. The magistrate who ordered that skull reinterred may not have been malicious. He may simply have been loyal to the map. The persistent discomfort that serious speculative anthropology presses upon us is this. We do not possess the complete biological history of our own species. We have fragments and we have a framework that was constructed to organize those fragments into a coherent and comfortable story. But frameworks are agreements. They are not facts. They are the maps we have learned over centuries to mistake for the ground beneath our feet. Somewhere in a sealed county record in Ohio, there is a sworn deposition from a gravedigger who for one autumn morning in 1864 held the question in both hands and was told by the authority of the state to put it back in the ground. What else have we buried? This video is produced for documentary exploration and educational entertainment purposes only. All alternative theories presented here are speculative in nature and do not represent established scientific consensus. Viewers are encouraged to consult primary sources and form their own conclusions.